So, then coming back down into town, we had the bar, and of course the lodge was built, Mama's Lodge, we call them Mama's and Daddy John, and they had the lodge, and of course they brought in everybody from Oklahoma. And then gambling came in. Of course, gambling was illegal in New Mexico. It was illegal every place, except Nevada. It was illegal. And of course, we knew it was illegal, but no one else in Taos County cared, so it didn't make any difference. So we just kept on having gamblers. And of course, gambling in those days is all operated by men, not us. We came from Kansas where it was dry. We didn't know bourbon from Scotch or Scotch from bourbon, or, Kansas was a dry state. But you soon learn. But anyway, you soon learn. So gambling came in. So they had slot machines, blackjack, poker, but the tourists just loved it. They'd bring their kids and just sit them at the machines and give them the money. But you could play with the nickel. But now, the machines is a quarter and $1, I think $1. And you could play dice for 25 cents. Now $5, you have to throw down $5 for your first play. And in those days, it was a quarter. But of course, in those days, you could make money on a quarter. But you can't do it now. You can't do it now. So, and the gambling helped and really went over big. And of course, as the town grew and the town got bigger, a lot of mad wives. And of course, one reason they couldn't report, there weren't any telephones. There weren't too many phones in town. Everybody didn't have a phone. Now every Tom, Dick, and Harry's got a phone, and all the kids have got telephones now. So it all adds up. So they just couldn't go and call, which you could go now, just go to your room and call. Those days they couldn't call the law because there weren't any phones. Whoever had them was just one or two, So, and gambling went on then for about 1949. And then, of course, the state came in and state finally came in and put a stop to it. So that ended the gambling era. So, in the meantime, the town was building. I'm trying to think what the first motel was. The lodge was the first thing. And,
El Sombrero was the first modern one.
I can't hear you.
El Sombrero was the first.
El Sombrero? Oh, yeah. El Sombrero came in. John Wagner Jr. was a son of Daddy John. El Sombrero came in and built the El Sombrero. It's a Sundance now that has the Mexican food. It was a Sundance. And it was a lovely, modern place. But everybody still had to have their own water in their pumps, And REA did not come in until 1948. Electricity didn't come in until 1948. But we all had wells and a pump. And those pumps just pumping all the time, So El Sombrero was built.
Riverside was already here. Riverside. They had cabins, the Londons.
Well, I can't hear.
The Londons had the Riverside.
Oh, well, I'll go up the street. I'll get them as I go up the street. The El Sombrero was there. And, of course, where the post office is now. Remember, there wasn't any post office there now. Postal was up there where, uptown where that big white building is. We call it Finks. I don't know what they call it now. There's something up there now. I don't know. And, I forget what I was going to say. Riverside was the next lodge, wasn't it? Riverside. Mr. and Mrs. Munden had Riverside. They had it. They had Riverside. And then on High Street, the Romers had their home on High Street. Ada worked for me, and I told you Earl, and then they built them a home over there. And then John Wagner had El Sombrero. And then
Grandview. The Clappers had Grandview. Grandview.
Oh, and then Grandview was, but that camp was already here. That was owned by Clapper. That was an old camp. Grandview Camp in Westerby's. And then, as I said, we went on down the street, went to Young's Ranch in your place, And then we came up here, and then Mr. Lyman Pratt had Rio, Colorado. Didn't Lyman have Rio, Colorado? And they had cabins. They're still up here, owned by Mr. Booker from Lubbock, right up here on the corner. Then next to him was the Walt Janney home, the Sherrard house, and Mother Pratt's home. Mother Pratt is right up there now. There's something in it, but I don't know what. But Mother Pratt's house, Mr. Pratt was a mining man. He owned the Carabel mine up Pioneer Canyon. And but they've all gone on, and of course their homes are still here. And then of course our bar, and the Johnsons still had their store going over there, because they've all gone on, and the Finks bought it, and it's been sold a half a dozen times since. You just can't keep up with who buys and who sells. And then coming on down into town, I thought you gals was going to ask me questions.
We're going to.
Then we came on downtown to Munden's, and in the meantime,
I think Jack and Lottie Brandenburg, you remember where they had their grocery store over there on High Street?
the Brandenburgs? The Brandenburgs had their first store down there at that end of town, and then they came up here and on High Street and built their store. Up on High Street where they had the post office, Francis.
Yeah.
Up on High Street, they had the post office. And of course I'll have to tell you about the post office. In the first place, it was only a second-class office, no money. At a second class is just cancellation. And of course, everybody wanted it, of course, but Miss Brandon, the Johnsons, I'll tell you about the feud. The Johnsons had the post office all the time. They were Republicans. They had all the, but just second class. There weren't any people here, and just cancellation. But of course, when all these people come in now, which Bob had, if it was cancellation, you'd really make money. Because everybody and all this mail coming in, you'd make money. But in those days, there wasn't anybody here. Over 10 or 15 families would stay all winter, nobody here. So Roosevelt, of course, was in for 16 years, and 16 years, ruined the country. But anyway, the Johnsons, of course, were Republicans. And then Mrs. Brandenburg decides that they were living at that end. The Brandenburgs were living down there where you go on this road and then the bridge. It's where Wayne Kidd lives now. The Brandenburgs live there. And she decided she wanted the post office. So the battle was on in 34. And it was zipped back, and it was zipped there, then it would be zipped back. Miss Johnson's had two sisters. She made them Democrats real quick, So they would get it, So they would get it, and of course, it just didn't work. And I think when it was sitting, in those days, you had to take your test, you had to have the highest grade, and all. But anyway, so that was the history of the post office. So Miss Brandenburg finally got the post office, and she had down at that end of town. It's on High Street where you have to stop where that bridge is, and then that first house there, I think Wayne Kidd lives in the house. And they had a post office. They had, there's little groceries in there, and I think they had a liquor license too. But anyway, she had the post office. Then of course, the battle was still going on, And Nellie got the highest grade, so Nellie got it back. So then Miss Brandenburg comes down on High Street just a little ways, and there was a house sitting there on the left, that side of the road. The post office was in there. And of course, one night the post office was dynamited. And the post office, nobody in it, nobody was hurt. The mail was just scattered, not enough, just to scatter the mail. So the post office was dynamited. Of course, Uncle Sam comes in with these greyhounds, but they never did find a clue. So that ended the post office deal. But when it was finally when Roosevelt, see, the government doesn't own the post office now. It's all leased out, you know. But when the department decided on Mrs. Brandenburg. So she got the post office, and they built that big white building down there on High Street. They had a grocery store and the post office, and their home was all in one building. So she had it there till she put in her 25 years and retired in 61 or 62 and has gone on. So that ended the post office deal. So then she had the post. Then when the post office deal, of course, was up, why, I'm not going to talk about myself, but anyway, the post office deal was up. Of course, they wanted me to have it, but I didn't want it because I had the lodge and I had the bar. In the meantime, my husband had passed on, and I knew I couldn't do it all, so I said, no, I just don't even want it. And no money, cancellation. When you sold a 2-cent stamp, you got a penny, you know, why? Anyway, so she had the post office, so when she retired, they come over and wanted me to take it when she retired. Of course, I didn't want it. And then they went over, and John Wagner at El Sombrero, he took it. So John Wagner had the post office for 2 years. And they had to, in order for them to have it, they had to wall off half of their lobby, in the lobby, for the post office. Of course, Nell, his wife, never did like it because it did ruin her lobby, you know. And so they gave it up. So then the post office had it. And then, so then they came, I was the county chairman, so then they came to me and they wanted to again, you know, it goes through the precinct and on up, you know. And then I said, well, I'll see if Betty will take it. That was my son's wife. So I said to Betty, I said, you've got 2 children, you don't have any money. And I said, that'll bring in a little more income, why don't you take it? So, of course, Betty took it. Of course, Bob was her competitor. Bob Troney was her competitor. So they went to Raton, and of course, Betty got the post office. She got the post office. But of course, she only kept it for 2 years, and then she gave it up. So then Bob got the post office. So Bob's had the post office for 25 years, and now he's retired. And of course, we don't know who the postmaster is going to be.